All right, well, you saw me. Maybe. So off we go, off to the races we are. It's Thursday. It's a good day. Slideshow, I got up some of my 6th edition orcs. So, yeah, how's everybody doing? I'm doing alright. Went out for a good walk today. Got some weird lump in my throat. I don't know what that's from. It could be just from drinking bad coffee or, whatever. Coffee. Mm. Delicious. So, welcome back. It's Christian here from the Eternal Chronicles. It is Thursday. We are deep into ORKTOBER, which means I am painting orcs. Um, it's funny, I love painting orcs, but I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to November because it means that I get to paint something a little bit different. Alex waves in the chat. I'll wave back. Maybe it's from eating all those wild mushrooms and white with poison ivy, probably, yeah. I sent some pictures yesterday. I was wandering through the woods and came across a patch of what I thought might be poison ivy, but it wasn't. It's funny. It doesn't really matter anyways. But I did find some mushrooms. And maybe I'll go back today and actually pick them. I'll bring a little forager bag and I'll go pick those mushrooms and wash them and boil them up with, or fry them up with some onions or something. Because that's something I tend to do. With mushrooms I buy at the grocery store, not mushrooms that I find in the ravine. But hey, what's the old saying? There's old mushroom eaters and bold mushroom eaters, but there are no old bold mushroom eaters. I don't know if that's necessarily true. So over here on the little slideshow, this is my 6th edition Orc and Goblin stuff. So there's Grimgor and his Ard boys. Ard, ain't they? I should probably just shrink this up so that it... and there is the legend itself, the Marauder Giant. And this is Da Umungus. So when I didn't use Grimgor, when I wasn't playing with special characters or something, this guy would be my war boss, who would lead the Immortals. Or sometimes I'd throw him in a squad, a big giant squad of Orc Biggins, because that way you get the Quell Animosity from him. Chariot, this is it. That's an Orc or a Goblin big boss on the Chariot there. So these are 6th, 7th edition. So this is a 5th edition Chariot. Which I would have painted up for 5th edition. It would have come out around the time of Idol of Gork, so with all that stuff. The guy on the back is actually a 7th edition Goblin Big Boss, fantastic model, and he just fits on the chariot so perfectly. And you can't really see it, but there's another Goblin behind him with a bow, so it's still fully crewed. I never got the 3-wolf chariot that they made. And then here is a pair of spear chuckas. So with some crew. So some of the crew are the actual crew for the spear chukka. And then I filled in a couple of extra with some Gorkamorka grots. You can see the 2 there in the front. The one pointing and yelling, and the one looking and raising his hand, and also. And then in the back there you'll see Bogoff, the Snotling, who's actually from Lair of the Orc Lord from Warhammer Quest. And the Bully is a Gorkamorka runt herd. I switched his little man catcher with actually one taken from the Empire the Empire War Wagon kit. So, and then I just left the whip, and then he has a holster on his back that I just puttied over and made it a giant sack to basically D40k him. So yeah, I thought you guys might get a kick out of this. And here's Grimgor himself. So I love this model. So I actually got my hands on this Grimgor while I was working at Games Workshop before the Orc book was released, and we didn't actually know what he was. We were just told he was a Black Orc war boss and that we needed to paint him up for the store. So the store manager at the time gave him to me to paint because he knew that I had an Orc Goblin army, and basically gave me the model and said, it's yours, you just got to paint it for the store, and then you can have it in your army. So yeah, I love Grimgor, and I tended to use Grimgor throughout 6th edition quite a bit, sort of tailoring my army around him, because I have no qualms with using special characters. I'm not a special character with a model as cool as Grimgor Ironhide, and with the background and sort of how he may be the once and future Git, you know. Where's my Games Day Black Orc? There should be a shot of him in here. Let's see. Let's go to the slides. No, so there's my Doom Diver, and you can see that I painted the little Doom Diver in the back, and that's my third Doom Diver because I have two. The two original Doom Divers I have. They're actually sitting in this thing of models here. I think they're in here. They might be in another one of these things that's full of orcs, waiting to be repainted. And that'll happen one day. All my 6th edition stuff I won't repaint. It's from a moment in time when Warhammer was like a much bigger part of it, because I was working for the company for that brief year, but even before and after, and definitely after, I played a lot of 6th edition, a lot of 7th edition. So that's when I was serious about the game, right? Like I took army building seriously and took, took my hobby seriously. And I'm not saying that I don't still take my hobby seriously, but I'm a little bit more relaxed and laid back with what I want to do and how I want to do it. There's the Orc Chariot that I added a 3rd crew to, so you can see I moved the rider to the front to the outside of the cab, and then there are 2 orcs in the back there with the long speary, stabby things that the chariot crew would have, just because you could add an extra orc to the crew, and that was an extra strength for attack on the charge, so why not, right? And there is, what's his name again? I don't know, I should break out my copy of Lair the Orc Lord. It's actually just up here with my Necromunda boxes. I can't remember what his name was. It was like Bizgob or Bosgob. I don't know. Anyways, he's the Brian Nelson Orc Shaman, and he's one of my favorite all-time orc models. And you can see how I was painting back then. I was going mainly from like green through like skeleton bone, and with like a little bit. So I wasn't really using a lot of, like, I was washing them with like a green wash, so it was green throughout. Today, if I was painting them, I would be using a little bit more browns and things like that for the washes and stuff, just to give the skin a more natural look. It looks a little waxy. I mean, it still looks like an orc. All right, orc's an orc. And I love my army. There's my big rock lava, one of many rock lavas I own. So I own a Bob Ollie Ironclaw rock lava. I own a Marauder rock lava. I own the Kev Adams rock lava from, well, he did the crew. Bob Naismith, I think, did the actual rock lava itself. And then I own this rock lava. This is the 6th edition rock lava. And I feel like I'm missing a rock lava that I own. It's entirely possible. And I have a couple of the bolt throwers, spear chuckers, whatever you want to call them. And then that, yeah, I don't know why the Games Day Black Orc should be up in this photo. I'll find a photo of him. Marauder Giant. So the Marauder Giant I painted for 4th edition. No, it would have been 5th edition. I didn't have my hands on him because I used the old Ralpartha Cloud Giant in 4th edition mainly as my giant. This giant actually was a gift. My friend Nico went down to Baltimore to do some training when they would actually send store managers to Baltimore to train for like a week. So he was down there in like doing that, and they gave them basically access to like the warehouse and said you can take some bits, and so he grabbed a giant for me because he knew that it was something that I wanted. So fantastic, love that model, joy to paint. I can still remember painting that model even though it was probably 25 years ago. And just a fantastic one. And he was rebased, so he used to be on just a regular 40 mil base, and I actually, if you look at his base now, you can see it's a 40 mil, and then there is a chair. I cut it straight, so I cut the bevel straight and glued a cavalry base to it, so it's actually more appropriate to the size of the model, because base size was a little bit important in 6th edition and 7th edition. I don't think Nazgob was in that. You're talking about the Lair of the Orc Lord for Warm Request? No, I'm talking about not Lair of the Orc Lord. Idol of Gork, the campaign set. And that's where those are from, and the chariot and the board. So there's a whole bunch of Brian Nelson models that were released around that, and we're back there. So and that was, sorry, Idol of Gork, Lair of the Orc Lord. I think when I was talking to you about it last, Alex, I was calling it the Grudge of Drong. I was like, oh yeah, I got the Grudge of Drong. And you're like, why would you get the Grudge of Drong? That's high elves and dwarves. And I'm like, oh, I don't mean Grudge of Drong. I mean Idol of Gork, because that's dwarves and orcs, and that's going to be fun. So yeah, so let's go overhead here, Let's go overhead here and see what we got. So there it is. I was doing some work on the Komasar today. Again, that was this morning, and I was trying to figure out his base, so I put some stuff down on him. He's now glued on. The driver is now glued on because they're basically done. The little grot on the back here, I am still working on, and I'm going to paint him today. I'm going to do his skin on stream for you guys today, so you'll get to see me. Because that's basically all that needs to be finished on him is his hood. Just needs a little bit of highlighting because it's black. And then his gun needs a little bit of work, and then his skin needs to be done. And then I'll worry about the banner pole at another day. Because it's going to be cut down. I need to find an appropriate thing to stick on top. I actually have some really, really old plastic skeletons that might work well for this. And we'll see what sort of bit I can find to put on the top there. And we'll do his skin and finish his face. And that way he'll be done. Because this is basically a done deal at this point. Not too much needs to be done to it. I want to put some decals on it. So what I'll do is I'll gloss varnish here on this part of this fender, because I'll put a decal there, and probably on this fender back here we'll gloss varnish, so that I can put a... you should always put down a gloss coat before you put a decal down, because it helps the decal lie as flat as possible and you don't get any air bubbles. When decal's silver, if you know what that means, it means that there's air trapped between... The decal can't adhere to the surface because the surface is a little too rough for it. So a gloss varnish will greatly help you with that decal adherence, and you won't get any silvering. And then you can matte varnish over top of that, and it'll lock the decal down under the varnish and provide you with a nice matte, and you won't be able to see the edging of the decal and stuff. And we'll see, when I get into decaling, I have to open a blister and hope that I didn't waste $12 on 30-year-old orc decals, because you never know. They could be garbage. Decals have a shelf life, right? And you're basically taking a risk if you're buying vintage decals that they're going to work at all. And I have some ways that I can potentially restore them, but they may be too far gone. They may be fine. We will see. And you can see I've done the base here. None of this has been glued down. This was stuff that I just sort of placed, giving me an idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these cogs like that. And then I'm going to have this little mushroom kind of like growing out of the side, because I think that'll look cool. The reason I have this little piece of cork on here is because this buggy has wobbly leg syndrome. So if I put it on the base, you can see. Can you hear that? Yeah, it's got wobbly model syndrome. So because it's lead, it's an old lead model. So I can make three. I can make this wheel and the front two wheels touch the base, no problem. And then I'll just take this and wedge this under, so that all four wheels are making contact. See? No more wobblies. And then I'll throw like another piece here or something, and then we'll do some other randomness to the base, because if you've seen my Dreadnought, you'll see sort of how it is that I want my bases to end up looking at the end of the day, more or less. This, obviously, I need to go back over this, and we'll do that maybe on next week's show, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with the weathering pigments, because I have weathering powders that I will then use to finish off the rubble parts of the base and things like that. And then I'll add some tufts and some foliage, because even though it is, a desolate planet, there would still be some vegetation. Okay, so... Orc boys that I was working on are mostly done. Yay! So there's a few little details hither and dither that I need to work on. Like any of these guys with goggles, I need to do a little bit of work on their goggles. I put some blue on it earlier, but I'm going to wash it with some blue ink and then give it like a little slight highlight. What I'll probably do is do a little bit of highlighting on it and then just glaze them. The red still needs to be done. So that's another thing. That's sort of the big remaining task. This guy's a little bit different because he got mixed up in the flow. But most of these guys are at a point where I'm going to call them, and then it's just a matter of basing them. A few little details here and there, like this guy's potato masher, and he's got another one hanging off his belt. Need to be painted. There's some weird filler stuff in here. Just a little few things here and there. Little paint errors where I got some red paint on the outside of the model. So we'll do that. But how about we start with the Goblin's flesh. So I will move everything else over. And we'll grab our little goblin, and I should have, yeah, oh no, that's, well, we'll use it. I'm looking, oh, there we go. When I'm painting a model that doesn't have a base that I can just lay it on, I like to put it on something soft so that it is okay. So let's zoom in just ever so slightly so we're a little bit more on the button. Push the big red button, as they say. And let's pick up our goblin. So he's basically on him. Everything is more or less done except for the gun metal. And there's a little bit of metal here that I'll go back over and add a little bit to, just so that it glints a little bit more. But I've done his kneecap. I've done the leather and all that. I've done his little red coat. And his little black hood. So we basically just need to do his face. So I decided that I would break from tradition in painting Goblin and use Goblin Green. So I'm using Goblin Green for their skin. However, I'm mixing that with, let's do, so I have two options that I would normally do for Goblin skin. And I think I'm going to use this one. Elf flesh, yes. Not heresy. I want to see those checkers on the buggy, says Tyler in the chat. Yeah. I've got lots of decals, so when I do a decaling tutorial day, maybe I'll do that next week, once I have enough stuff to throw some decals on. We'll do a little decaling tutorial, and I'll show you, and I can show you with decals that are brand new, in case the ones that are 30 years old are pieces of shit. So I'm just going to drop a Goblin Green down. And then I'm just going to drop a drop of this elf flesh, which tends to be a very bright flesh. I have another flesh called bright flesh, which is very bright. I also have fair skin, which is, when I'm painting elves, I usually go elf flesh to fair skin. Fair skin. Where's that really bright flesh? It's literally called bright flesh. It should be with all my other flesh. There it is. That's really bright. Bright skin. So you know what, the bright skin? Yeah. Change my mind. I'm gonna go with the bright skin over the Grot. And it, again, like, I don't have to stick with this. There's no reason why all these guys have to have the exact same skin pigmentation. You know. Oh, and just for the record, his legs are not skin. I'm gonna repaint those probably black or something. Because I painted them as flesh. And then I was kind of looking at him, and I realized there's kind of like a fold here around the knee and stuff. And I said, oh, he's wearing pants, or at least tights. So that won't be flesh. The rest of them will, though. So we'll throw down some of our bright skin here. And I'm going to start with the Goblin Green. And let me grab one of my horribly, horribly fantastic brushes. This one looks pretty good. And so I'm just going to start with Goblin Green. And make sure I got brush control, so paint control on the brush. And then I'm just going to start highlighting. So tip of the nose, bridge of the nose, catch those eyebrows, catch those cheekbones. Go down the cheeks to his lip, which will go across. It's just like painting an orc's skin, more or less. Under the nose, get that upper lip. Yeah, what a great looking goblin, eh? This is one of the early ones, so this guy's tab. What? Sorry, my computer's sending me messages about like how it's created photo albums for me. Like, I didn't ask you to do that, Windows. Fuck off. Look at this photo album we created for you. Some recent photos. Yeah, I download and upload photos on my computer all the time. I don't need you making photo albums for me, Windows. Nobody asked you to do that. That is not a feature. Oh, God. Good times. We'll get the other hand over here, too. Making sure, again, we get the fingers. You guys have seen me paint lots of greenskin hands, that's for sure. Well, you're going to get to see me do one more right now. So I'm just making sure that I get, you know, a good decent amount of that green back over. Because I put the Goblin green down and then I washed it with light tone. Army Painter Quick Shade Light Tone. Let that cure. And now I'm, and you can see it's cured. It's actually cured quite dark, which I knew it would, even though it's called light tone. It gives you the exact sort of shadow that I want for this kind of green that I'm doing. And again, after 30 some odd years of painting green orcs, painting goblinoid flesh, it almost becomes second nature. So there we go. And like I said, I'm not going to do the legs because those are actually going to be tights. What color should I do them? What color leggings should he have? You know what I like the idea of? I'm also looking at what colors I have currently sitting on my wet palette that I can just exploit. You know what? We'll give him little dandy boy tights here. Oh, what are you doing? Painting goblin legs. What are you doing? Hopefully you. Let's make sure you can see what I'm doing. Get around the front of the leg. Up over the knee. You don't have to go right down in because, again, I'm going to wash it. I got to be careful going around this little bit of armor plate that he has on his knee. And then getting underneath here. Delicate, delicate work. Oh, but you make it look so easy, Christian. I know, I do, I know. It's because I'm that damn good. So what's going on in the world today that wasn't going on in the world yesterday? Hey, the NASA Joa. Hey, hey. Indeed. Welcome to the chat. I'm just painting a Gretchen here that's going to be hanging off the back of a buggy. So now I'm going to take some of that bright flesh and I'm going to mix it with some of that goblin green. And we'll go back to his skin. And again, at this point, I still want it more green than flesh because there will be one more step, one more intermediary in between this. But again, so now we're just going tip of the nose, tip of the chin, cheekbones, a little, just like a little spot at like the bridge of the nose, and then when you do the brows, the best way to hit the brows is from underneath and just kind of run it along the edge towards the outside, and then the bottom lip as well. And then the upper lip, just a little tiny bit on either side, just to sort of bring the color up a bit. And we'll get his nostrils as well, because those should be pronounced. And do the tip of his nose again. All right, and then we'll do the arms. So, top of the bicep here, down the forearm. Make sure we get the elbow. I need to finish my Orc War Boss and post pics on Insta. Do it. Let's see it. Yeah. ORKTOBER marches on. But I'll be... You know, it's going to be really funny? Is that like the first 2 weeks of November, I'll be so hyped to be painting something other than orcs. And then like by the third week of November, I'll be like, man, I really want to paint that insert orc grot model here. And I'll end up painting that. Just to give you sort of a sneak peek, those of you on the stream will know before anyone else. Although I think I've probably made it pretty clear what my plans for November are. My plans for November to paint some old Rogue Trader models, which I think will be a lot of fun. And it'll probably be a lot of fun to watch too. Not that I'm not painting old Rogue Trader models right now, because I totally am. But different old Rogue Trader models that aren't Orks or Space Grots. Actually, I believe this guy's base did say Goblin on it. It said like Space Goblin or something. Ooh, what's with the hair there, buddy? Yeah, and now I'm just adding, so that mix, I'm just adding a little bit more bright flesh to the green that I just put on. So I'm basically just bringing it up a little bit more. And now it's literally just like the tip of the nose, the very tippy tip of the chin. We will do the whole bottom lip because that's going to get washed with a flesh wash. So we will get the whole bottom lip. And then just like the tips of the cheekbones at the very edges here. And then same thing with the brows, just kind of the edges of the brows. And I will put one again across the bridge of his nose, but again, that's probably going to get washed. And again, it's not an exact science. It is an art. So, you know, feel free to blend and add where you feel it's appropriate to add some color. Look at that little face. That was a face only a goblin mother could love. If goblins had mothers. Some goblins do have mothers. I always thought fantasy orcs would have like, well, I mean, it was kind of established in the lore, but like, fantasy orcs I never saw as fungus, right? The whole space orc being fungus thing is kind of a cool, like, scientific way to explain why are these big green monsters running around the galaxy. So it worked for me. I bought into space orcs being basically mushrooms, right? Sentient mushrooms. Although I believe all mushrooms are sentient. Yeah. Look at the, what is it? The mycelium network that connects all the trees and stuff, and it's like this like fungal network that the trees are then able to communicate each other through root structure, through their roots and things. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I gotta say, a lot's pretty cool. We'll just get the tip of the goblin here. There we go. And then we make sure that you get his elbows. His little elbows should be pretty bright because he's got ashy elbows, I guess. I don't know. Do you suffer from ashy elbows? I used to suffer from ashy elbows. And then I'm just going to go back in with like a little bit more green, but just to sort of help these blend in a little bit better and stuff. Like getting like the sides of the nostrils, because you really want those to stand out. And then maybe under, picking out the cheekbone a bit more. And once we do the eyes, it will, which I'm going to do right now. Oh, get a different brush. Got a slightly much smaller brush. This is my trusty Rusty 000. It's a Winsor Newton Series 7, my favorite brand of brushes. There are many good brushes out there. I just prefer these. I started using these probably about 10 years ago, I want to say, and I've never looked back. So Scrot's got nice big eyes, so this should be nice and easy to just get in there with my very bright red. And if you wonder why I keep like touching my brush to my tongue, it's because I'm just adding like a tiny little bit of moisture to it, which just helps the pigment flow off the brush. And it's just one of those things where you're like, I'm a paint eater. I was born a paint eater. I will die a paint eater. Probably. Alright, so I'll upload pics of my Scottish orc. Give me a sec. I want to see a Scottish orc. I once painted a Scottish orc for an orc unit. It was actually for an orc army I don't own anymore, my space orc army. And I did one, and I gave him the little hat. So there was a hat on the Mordheim human accessory sprue. There was like a little like floppy hat. So I gave him the little floppy hat and like set it to one side, like on an angle. And then I used fantasy orc legs on him, and there's a fantasy orc set of legs that is basically a skirt. And so I painted that like a kilt. I actually did a tartan on it. And he just disappeared into a giant unit of orc boys, right? But it was just a fun thing to do because, you know, I actually am. My heritage is mostly Scottish, and by mostly Scottish I mean I'm a filthy colonialist in that I live in Canada. But I'm a loyal member of the British Empire. Is that how it works? Don't send the beefeaters after me, Queen. I'm a loyal servant of the throne, of the crown. More like the golden throne. You know what I'm talking about? No, not really. So I'm just highlighting these goblins' eyes now, which I'm doing some lantern orange or lantern yellow. Is it lantern yellow or lantern orange? It should probably be called lantern yellow. Yeah, it's lantern yellow. Which, again, it's just helping to give the eyes some variance and some, so that they kind of shine out of his face. But now, I'm going to flesh shade. So. Dooby-doop-doop-dooby-doo. So, same thing as with the orcs. The first thing I'm going to do, well, the first thing I'll do on him is I'm going to do the lower lip. So I will go under there, and I will go right under the lip and wash the underside of his bottom lip. And then go to the top and wash the top of his bottom lip, basically helping to pick out that lip. Give it a change of color, because our lips are a different color shade than the rest of our face. And then if you look, again, like where, if you look at my face, you can see like I've got, this is why people always think I'm Greek. I grew up in an area of Toronto that had a very, very heavy Greek population, and all the old Greek women thought I was Greek because of the bags under my eyes, which I apparently have had since I was a grade 6. I don't know. I guess I don't sleep enough or get enough caffeine. But even like around the nose and like under the nose, and like you just see like where skin is never one tone, one shade, right? So now we'll just do the eyes. And I do a fairly decent wash just right over the tops of the eyes, because again, that helps them to sink. It helps them to sort of work better within the head. And then I'll go across the bridge of the nose, again, to add a little color variance. And then we'll go under the nose, because what kind of a goblin would have a clean area underneath his nose. And then just there, where the cheekbones meet the nose, we'll add a little bit more. And sometimes on goblins, because their nose is quite different, I tend to come right up and try and, you can see on either side, right above the nostril, really add, and that helps to sort of define the pointiness of the goblin nose. And there we go, the nose. So I'm just going to finish up those pants real quick. I will grab some strong, nope. Where is it? There we go. Soft tone. And drop a blop of that down. And we'll just add that little wash over top. And by a little wash, I mean a fairly thick wash, because you want to get around behind the back of the knee there to add some shadow around the, I'll go right across there where it's just, I've actually got some black wash. I'll just drop that in there. And then that knee, like that. And then how are we going to get inside there without mucking up the boot? Because the boot is basically done. And there we go. There's our little grot. Basically done. I have to... So I'm going to take some of this ashen gray that I use for highlighting black. I'll put a little blop down there. Beside, I've got some black, some dark tone ink there that I had there which I'm actually going to use to shade down the ashen gray. So I'll get some black ink on my brush, and then a little bit of the ashen gray on my brush, and mix them together on my wet palette, which you can't see, but trust me, it's what I'm doing right now. To sort of make a thin, translucent layer, which I can then use to highlight this, so you'll see. Easy peasy, eh? Just want to go around his face, so essentially I'm creating a frame, because what is your eye drawn to? When you pick up a miniature, what's the first thing you're going to look at? The face. So the face always needs to have a little bit more love and care put into it than the rest of the model. Generally, if you're painting the way I'm painting right now, which is I'm painting to get a whole bunch of orcs done. So not that I don't love painting these models. I have a lot of them, and I have an economy. I have to economize my time, right? I have to make my time, my painting time, count. And because I've given myself this artificial deadline for having a lot of this stuff done by the end of the month, and I'm not cutting corners, because I don't cut corners. I mean, I for a while I thought about calling my painting stream The Lazy Man Paints. So, because sometimes I can be a really lazy painter at time, and that's usually when it's something that I just need to get done for the sake of getting it done. And the best thing is that for a while there, for several years, when I wasn't really painting armies and I was just kind of painting models for myself, it was great because I was painting it. There wasn't anything that I was painting with the idea of, I just need to get this done, so let's just get it painted. And there's something to definitely be said for that. Let's paint the back of his hood here. So what's going on in the world today? You almost don't want to ask. You're better off just staying inside and watching me paint miniatures. Or paint miniatures yourself, even better. I would love to paint on stream with people. Do like a Zoom meeting kind of hobby paint thing. It would probably mean that I don't know if you need a setup quite like what I've got. You need a webcam at the very least. We don't need to all, see each other's painting tables. But whatever you can, if it's something that you're interested in, let me know, because I think it would be really cool to do. I sort of have some what was I gonna say? My long-term goals for the channel. Liam Rosh says, "Hiya, Chris. Chat. Hiya, Liam. Chat." Right back at ya. Or is that like hiya, Chris's chat? Like this is my chat. I'm sure he's got a gyro or two in his pouch. A gyro or a gyros? Are we talking about Greek food? I gotta figure out what's going on in the chat here. So he's a Greek goblin. Yes, he's a Greek goblin. Don't you know all goblins are Greek? Or all Greeks are goblins? I don't know. There's no scientific way to prove that that's one way or the other. Yeah, I don't know. So there we go. I'm going to take a tiny, tiny bit of some white that I just happen to have sitting on my wet palette, and I'm going to add it to the ashen gray to lighten it up. Because now what I'm going to do is the Flask final little bits of highlighting on here, which means like right here, like that. We'll catch the bottom of his like collary thing here for his hood, like so. I'm going to have to go across the top here gently, or starting about here, and just gently pulling it across. Again here, and just gently pulling my highlight across. Something like that. And then, again, you want to frame the face, so you want to provide a nice, smooth framing of the face. And then we'll go back and do the back of his hood here. Ow! I just jabbed myself on that pike. Maybe I should have cut the tip off that before. It depends how long it's going to be. And again, it's going to be limited by the amount of space it takes up in my case, because I want it to sit flat in the case. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, though. I'll probably end up cutting this down to here, putting something on the top. Like a raccoon tails. I've got some like wolf tails and stuff I could put on there. You could have like a little like coon tail flying off the back of it there. But I guess it should be something Komasarish, right? A whole bunch of orc heads, a whole bunch of orc heads with a whole bunch of orc skulls with big bolt holes in the top of them, where they've been shot for cowardice as a reminder. He's probably the most popular knob in the army. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we love that guy, the Komasar. Yeah, he's the best." Okay, and there we go. I'm just going to quickie grab some just the ashen and make this less. Some of this washy. There we go. Just was a little bit too much. And perfect. All right. So I'm going to grab this crappy brush again, which is one of my favorite brushes to use, even though it is totaled. And I'm going to grab, I got a little bit of bolt gun on here. And I'm just going to quickly brush it across the top here to help pick out the metal. And I love this antique pistol he's got. And you can actually, one of the weapons I think you can roll up for, well, you can do it for Grot, for Gretchen bandits. One of the weapons you can buy is an antique pistol. So, because there were stats for those in Rogue Trader. He literally had, like, this thing looks literally like a little cannon. It's great. So that's him. Nope, not yet. Not quite yet. Just when you think you're done, you forget about the pants. So let's get some of that khaki that I should still have. And we'll blend that in. And the great thing about having wet palettes is you can put paint on them, and then that paint can sit there for, you know, a long time, and it still becomes usable. So you don't have to go back and forth all the time. But that's all I wanted to do, was just sort of pick up the pants a bit. Hey, yo, Grot, pick up your pants. Pick up your tights. Grot and tights. All right. And then just a little bit more of the gunmetal metallic. He's got these like little vents that go over his ears, which I think are really cute, so he can hear while he's wearing his hood. Doesn't interfere with his ability to listen. Not that I'm sure he's the most tactically minded of Grots. Okay, and then that's it for him. Really, until I do the banner. That's my Grot. So let's stick them on, and let's see how the whole thing's going to look together now. More or less together. We'll stick that in there. How he's kind of hanging off and stepping on the engine. Ooh, hot foot. And there we go. Don't turn around. Oh, do, do, do. Der Komasar's in town. Do, do, do. There we go. I do have to paint the wheels, but I'm going to do that once it's all been glued down to the base. So, and like I said, the base is going to look like this. Roughly. Oh. Let's get to the center here. The center of the Tootsie Pop. And there we go. I got this little pile of gears and whatnots to stick down here. And I got a little mushroom that I want to stick over here. And then probably some more corks somewhere on the base. So we'll do the base another day. There's a few little details here and there, like some wires and stuff. I tend to do that once everything is sort of done, including the base, and like the model is essentially finished. Before I coat over the whole thing, I'll do one last quick pass over. And that's the kind of time like I would paint some of this stuff in here, maybe put some color, do the headlights. So there needs to be like a reflective in the, or like a glare coming off the headlights. So that kind of stuff. But for all intents and purposes, the Komasar is basically finished. Except for the Grot hanging off the back, needs his flag. So we'll figure all that out. I'm just going to move all this stuff back over here. And we can look at some of these orc boys. Oh, someone got himself a nice little pink hair squig. How do you do that? With contrast voluptuous pink. Crimson Fist helmet. Yeah, where is he? Ah, where is he? He's in here somewhere. Ah. Crimson Fist helmet. There we go. I decided to go with the classic. And also because the blue and the green should never be seen, right? So they're contrasting colors. So I'm just going to add a bit more in here to help. Sometimes you need multiple coats, depending on what you're doing. For this hair squig, yeah, I do. Just because it's on top of his head and it needs to. There we go. Hair squig, and this is obviously the orc with the golden pants. Paid good money for those golden pants. Looks pretty good. I didn't paint his teeth on purpose. I actually probably need to go in there with a bit more black paint because you can kind of see the teeth in there. So I need to go in there with like a piece of like some like solid flat, like really flat black, and go in there and just get rid of them all. Yeah. Do need to finish the gold on those pants, and I do need to finish all the metals on their on his weaponry and stuff. But again, for all intents and purposes, these guys are basically done. Other than their bases, their eyes still need more work. So what do we got going on in the chat here? So he's the Greek Goblin. How are you handling the ORKTOBER burnout? Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Is I'm sort of entering into that ORKTOBER burnout. Because I've mentioned before on chat, usually when I'm painting, I have 2 or 3 very different types of projects going on, so that I can take breaks. When I was doing Old Hammer stuff earlier this year, it was great. I wasn't doing anything on stream, but it was great because I was working on Wood Elves and Orks and Goblins, and I was painting the occasional Ogre, the occasional Chaos Dwarf, the occasional Chaos Champion model, Beastman. Like, I had a whole bunch of different... I had my fingers in a lot of different Old Hammer pots at the time. So it was easy to get stuff done. Need to do the red. So I'm just going to go back over and quickly pick up some of these eyes that may have gotten a little bit too much of the wash. This will help to get them up. And additionally, I realize the big thing that I need to show you guys is the red on the armor, and I even put paint on my palette to do so. So, let me get my favorite brush for doing such things, Old Halfy here. Old Half a brush. Yep, look at those bristles. Half of them are gone, but look at that point. Yeah. And I'm just going to grab some of my rust red and a little bit of that mustard yellow, and I'm going to mix them together a little bit on my palette, which you can't see, but that's fine. And then I'm just going to highlight the legs. Simple, simple, simple. So we'll do these kneecaps. It's almost a quill now. It's a great paintbrush, man. And if you don't take care of your brushes, like I do, then you too can have fantastically garbagey brushes that you love to use, because they do exactly what you want them to do regardless of how bad they look. And then out here, across there. So did anyone watch that AEW wrestling thing last night with Chris Jericho and what's his name? And shit. Anyways, they did like this whole like Me and My Shadow song and dance number, and it was absolutely hilarious, especially to see something like that on a pro wrestling show. Was amazing. Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, that's it, yep, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who's probably one of the best heel wrestlers in the business right now in terms of his mic skills and his ability to just piss people off. It's good. I guess I could do a whole show on pro wrestling, right? Who's your favorite orc in the new Old As army? Who's my favorite orc? Like orc, just like orc miniature or orc character? Like my favorite orc character is for some reason it's Grimgor Ironhide. I just really like his. Actually, you know what? Probably the orc with the coolest story is well, Grom is pretty good. Grom the Paunch has a pretty good story. What's his name? Gorfang Rotgut has got a pretty good story. I liked Gorbat Ironclaw. I gave away, I traded away my Gorbat Ironclaw model, the 7th edition one. I should have kept him. I have a one that I'm working on. Now this was actually, so funnily enough, I'll touch on this briefly because I tend to do these types of things, like get off track. This was the last model I was working on for Warhammer when I quit Warhammer. Sort of quit Warhammer. I basically stopped working on Warhammer. So I was doing a new... Every edition, I pretty much pick a new guy to be my war boss, right? So like 6th edition, I used Grimgor, but then I also used like a non-special character. I had the guy you saw, the Da'umungus. My 5th edition one was also Da'umungus, but he was, and I gotta find, I have negatives of the photos. I gotta get those scanned so I can put them up, of an orc war boss on a chariot. And that orc war boss on a chariot is, it was a Gorkamorka orc knob that I put on the back of Grom's chariot, but instead it was pulled by boars, and he had a chain, and I had an old lead zombie on the front and some spikes and things. It was a cool model. And there he is, you can see. So that was the Umunga. So he was like my 6th edition guy and sort of my 7th edition guy. Actually, this was more my 7th edition guy because I think I put him together. I also had the orc, the previous orc war boss on a wyvern, who's now sitting in a bag. The worst possible thing I could do to this poor guy. This wyvern sitting in a bag, waiting to be restored. So this was sick. I got this in the 6th edition army box. So he led my army for a while, and then the Umungus led my army for a while, and Grimgor, and they sort of. And then in 8th edition, I decided I need a new war boss. So I started to work on a new war boss, and I was going to use the Azhag the Slaughterer model. So that's what I've got here. So I've got Azhag's wyvern, and I'll show you the rider for it. Let's go back overhead here and zoom out just slightly, so you'll get a better view of this. There we go. So this is, I decided to paint up as an albino. So this is an albino wyvern, and this is a fine cast model. And this is one of the other reasons why I kind of decided that I just had enough of Warhammer for a while. Fine cast is, the initial launch of Fine Cast was a disaster. The models were just gross. This was the result of going through 3 or 4 boxes of Azhags to find pieces that were cast well enough that you could make one good one. And we still couldn't do it. I still had to contact some people that I knew that happened to work down in Memphis and say, hey, look, I bought this Azhag. It's fine cast. I'm not getting a good cast. My Games Workshop store is now out of stock of them because we opened 3 or 4 boxes to get parts. Can you just send me a good Azhag? And apparently one of the mail order trolls went down to the warehouse, opened boxes down there to find me pieces, and sent me an Azhag that was all intact. Yeah, fine casts. It's gotten a little bit better, but for the most part it's garbage. So this we have. All the pieces for the Azhag Wyvern, and they're all decent. And I had to do a little bit of green stuff work, a little bit in a few places. And he had a base, and he was going to be the new war boss for my 8th edition Orc and Goblin army, which never happened because I stopped playing. I still followed the game. Then the end times happened, and they killed Warhammer. So this model never got finished for that. I finished this, and I have the rider here. So here's the rider. So the rider, speaking of Gorbat Ironclaw, is a converted Gorbat Ironclaw. And you can see where I've had to go in with green stuff and repair a lot of what Finecast does, right? And I had to cover up some things and extend, and I added a few more skulls hither and dither. Changed his helmet. Put this on the front, which is off a Black Orc Big Boss on foot. More Finecast goodies. And then yeah, so this never got finished. And then eventually, and then I decided once that I would do it for Age of Sigmar, because the orc boss on a Wyvern is a really cool, has a really cool war scroll, but he's not in any army book anymore, and there's no, like, and I don't really play Age of Sigmar now. I still follow it. I'd still play Age of Sigmar. I love my, I was telling my buddy Alex that the only saving grace for Age of Sigmar right now is that Night Goblins continue to exist in that game. I said, if they wrote Night Goblins out of the game, I'd be done with it, right? So the fact that I can still get, like, I can have my army of Squig hoppers and trolls and all that good stuff means that Age of Sigmar isn't all lost. It's not all lost on Age of Sigmar yet. There we go. So, and one day, you know, it's cyclical with my group and I. We tend to get hype about something and then want to play it, and then we all get ready to play, and by the time we're ready to play, we're hype about something else. So we get ready to play that, and then and it just seems like that is like the never-ending story of our painting and playing. And of course, 2020 has been the year of not really playing much of anything. I got a few games in early in the year, and then a few games in back in August when I went down to play some Warhammer Quest with my buddy Ash on his channel, Guerrilla Miniature Games, shout out. So yeah, so that's the extent of the playing that I've gotten to do this year, and hopefully in 2021 we'll get to do a lot more actual game playing. I mean, even in 2020, I want to salvage the rest of this year if possible. It's just who knows what the future is going to bring, especially the immediate future is probably a little bit more tricky. So there we go. It's got some eyes, no teeth. Gobblepalooza for the best new name. Yeah, I love the Gloomspite Gits are really cool. I like them because they feel like the Age of Sigmar version of mischievous fairy folk, right? They have that real thing, and they're just, I don't know. I like Night Goblins, which is funny because I never really used Night Goblins all that much in Warhammer when I played, because I mainly played Orc armies with. And 6th edition, it was like Orc armies with goblins manning the guns. My 6th edition Orc army might as well have been like a 40k style army, where it was all the boys out doing the fighting, and the only Grots I have in the army are manning the big war machines in the back. Right? I never really took Goblin units. I did a little bit in 5th edition because I had some of those Brian Nelson Night Goblins. I never had enough of the old school Night Goblins. The old Kev Adams one from the 4th edition Night Goblins to actually be able to do a full Night Goblin unit, even. And at that point, you know, like, Goblins are still second to Orks, right? Orks are still, you know, the coolest. And Goblins get to be the second coolest. I mean, it's not bad, right? Although I'm sure that there are some Orks out there who would be like, well, I'd take an Umi over a Goblin, over a Grot any day. You know. But they get to be better than Stunties, so that's good, right? Doomdiver could be the best model idea in the game. I have a funny story about fighting. My buddy Nico and I were playing, and he was using his Chaos Warrior. This would have been 5th edition. So he was using his Chaos Warrior army, which was led by a Bloodthirster. And I try his Bloodthirster. I mean, if you ever played 5th edition, there's a reason why they call it Hero Hammer. And it's because the big stuff, the big guys, the big heroes, the big monsters, they do all the work. So he had charged into my unit of Black Orcs, pretty much wiped them out to a man. Flank charged into another unit, and then I flank charged him with my war boss on the chariot. Did a bunch of impact hits to him, did a bunch of wounds, but couldn't finish him off. Right. He then kills my war boss, just turns around and just smashes the crap out of the chariot, smashes the crap out of my war boss. My war boss is dead. And, sorry, I'm just going through and checking all their eyes and stuff to make sure that... Good. So, in a Hail Mary pass, I send both my Doomdivers onto the Bloodthirster, right? They both hit or redirect themselves back on. One Doomdiver hits him, does nothing, just bounces off him. I've got to do 6 wounds to kill him. And Doomdivers did d6 wounds. So I'm like, well, I got to hit and wound with this Doomdiver. Doomdiver hits, then he wounds. Then I roll the wounds, and I do 6 wounds to the Bloodthirster and kill him. So at that point, I told Nico that what he needed to do was he needed to get a Doomdiver model and model the Doomdiver like stuck into the top of the Bloodthirster's head. Because that's essentially the greatest moment of that Goblin's life, and the end of his life, you know, was killing a Bloodthirster. And those are the types of things you remember. I was going to sort of inadvertently talk about like game balance today, because it's a myth. There's no such thing as game balance. All miniature games are asymmetrical. No matter what you do, you will never have a truly balanced game. Even in chess, you know, white gets to go first. So there's then you could say, well, there's an advantage to going second. Say, well, there's an advantage to going first, and they may be different. And they, depending on how you play, it may be more advantageous to go first or second, right? When you're dealing with a war game like Warhammer that has so many variables and so many possible combinations, the idea that the game is in any way going to be balanced because you built a 2,000-point army and I built a 2,000-point army is ludicrous. It's an illusion. There's no such thing as game balance. So my question is, well, why bother then, right? Like, why bother with lists? Why bother with, you know, why maintain the illusion? Why not just go full narrative and just take what you want? Because I can tell you, some of my most memorable gaming experiences were in totally lopsided affairs. I talked about on stream before about playing up my cottage. My buddy Nico and we had, like, you know, we had a few models apiece in our collection. We didn't have enough to make armies. So I built a scenario that was my... Sorry, I'm just going to get some paint out here. That was three Gene Stealer, pure strain Gene Stealers versus an Inquisitor and a few Guardsmen. And we made this scenario where it was like dark, and the basically Inquisitor and the Guardsmen had to like get across the table, get from basically one piece of terrain to another, and I was just ambushing him with Gene Stealers. And it was a totally unfair game. Like, the Gene Stealers had all the advantages, and the Inquisitor and the Guardsmen were fucked, right? And they did. They ended up dying, I think, like by like the third or fourth turn. It was only the Inquisitor left because I'd picked off all the Guardsmen. And then my Gene Stealers ambushed and killed his Inquisitor on like the fourth turn of the game, I want to say. Maybe even like the third turn of the game. We may have even gotten to the fourth turn. But we both remember that game because of how memorable and silly it was that the Inquisitor had no chance, right? And it wasn't that we built it that way. It's just that I decided on the scenario and said, I'm going to run Nico through the scenario, and he's going to try and live. And it was totally unfair of me to do it that way. But to this day, we both remember it. We both talk about it and joke about it, you know, and we have like that, like the shorthand that comes with like knowing someone since grade 6, like knowing someone since you're like 12 years old. Basically the shorthand you develop with that person. That game of 40k that we played with his Inquisitor and his Gene Stealers is it's like our Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra, right? Like I can just say, oh yeah, remember that time that those Inquisitors, Inquisitor whoever, you know, getting his ass handed to him by Gene Stealers, and a converse one sort of the other way around was I was using Harlequins and Nico had Imperial Guard, and this is when we had more models in our collection, so this was later on, and we had more models in our collection. He actually had enough that he could put together like not an Imperial Guard force, but like a bunch of Imperial Guardsmen, a bunch of humans, some like random stuff here and there. He had some adventurer and pirate models that he basically was like his Inquisitor or whatever. And I had Harlequins. And so he made a scenario where I had to come at him lengthwise across a table. And he sat at one end with all his big guns, and I had Harlequins coming across. And there was a little bit of patchy cover here and there, mostly just soft cover though. Lichen that we had put out, and you know, a few like little barricade things of whatever we had in our very poor terrain collection at that time. And it was my job to get my Harlequins onto him. And by the second turn, I had no Harlequins left because first turn I move on my Harlequins up, and they're flipping and they're flopping and they're flying and they're going over the terrain because they got their flip belts and all that good stuff. And then he opens up with his guns and just pastes like half my army, half my Harlequins. And I'm like, okay, well, I still got more Harlequins, and as soon as I get to you, the Harlequins I do have are gonna mess you up because Harlequins are really good in close combat. If you didn't know, but I never got to him because by the second turn I was pasted. And that was because he had set the scenario. And again, you know, to this day we can still talk about how ridiculous that game was, but how fun it was, and we remember those sorts of things, you know. So I think that the idea of balance and trying to attain balance, I think is is counter to the way that the game should be played, right? It should be more of a narrative event where you are cooperatively telling a story with your opponent in a lot of ways. And all my most memorable games, Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games and I, back in like 2000, would have been 4th edition. So I want to say like 2003-ish. We played a series of games, which was my Imperial Guard army led by Inquisitor Belladonna, who was a converted... Actually, she's up there. I can show you. She's a converted Sister of Battle. And I converted her to be an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor. And Ash had the Black Library Limited Edition Inquisitor hand model. And so he had his Inquisitor with his guard, and I had my Inquisitor with my guard, and we played like a little like Inquisition War kind of game, right? And it was fun. And we played a series of 3 or 4 games, and there was no structure to the narrative. We built the narrative as we played. We just played games and just sort of took what models we wanted. And if we wanted to do something crazy, like at one point, his Inquisitor jumped down from like a cliff top and landed on top of my Inquisitor's Rhino. And so like that was... you know, like this. So it was like that was like a memorable thing. We didn't even have rules for it. He said, he just jumps down and he's in power armor. He's got power fists, whatever. He's gonna land on top of the rhino, and we'll let him close combat the rhino from up there, and then my Inquisitor got out, and they had a big duel, and like we remember these things. So we remember those types of moments. We remember the narrative stuff. What I don't remember is the billions and billions of just games that I played for the sake of winning the game, I guess could be a way you could say it. I think I've already done this. I think I'm just painting over models now. Who else? You. I'm just making sure that I'm getting the glint in the eyes right, and then I'm going to finish up that red armor bits on them. But you just kind of want to... Lots of little bits there. Actually, these guys are actually pretty good. This guy probably needs a bit more. So yeah, the NASA Joe says, GW sells models, not rules. They're just there so you can play with your toy soldiers. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that they're called Games Workshop when really they're a miniature manufacturer. At the end of the day, they sell plastic, right? They sell plastic kits, model kits. And good for them, because it seems to be working, because they've had me as a steady, loyal customer for 30-something years now. So let's get a slightly different brush, and we'll work on some of this red. So we'll start with this guy's shoulder pad. So I'm just going to take, again, and a little bit of moisture, because these are high-density pigments, so you can add a lot of water to them, and they don't water down. So, and then I'm just going to go around. You can see, like, this one's got, like, some, like, cool, like, cracks on it and stuff, this little shoulder pad. But I just want to lighten it up. And then a little bit of that mustard yellow. And we'll go around the rim here. The corner. That and that. How's that looking? Inquisitor Shavak in the chat. At the end of the day, if their rules are complete garbage, people don't buy as much. True. To an extent. I think people will accept... I think what'll happen is that whatever's garbage, people won't... Like, that's that whole chasing the meta thing, right? It's like if something is shit in the game, and a player base can sort of recognize it and point it out early on, then, you know... people aren't going to use it, which means people aren't going to buy them. If something is obviously really good and overpowered, and there's some sort of an exploit, people will buy 3 of them, right? That was sort of the thing back in the day, was whatever you took, you would just spam 3 of them, and but again, you're not forging that narrative. You're not building a story, and at the end of the day, the narrative games are the ones that we remember. I don't remember all the competitive games of... Well, I never really played 40K competitively, but all the competitive games of Warhammer that I played, I don't really remember them. So look at this guy. Do some helmeting. Yeah, Betty. Look at your helmet. It's so red. It looks like a Blood Bowl helmet. Almost, eh? No, 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 no. Let's grab a little bit of yellow, brighten that up a bit. A little bit more yellow. Let's go under here. Because again, trying to frame the face. Boy, it'll be great once these orc boys are done. Because then I've got more orc boys to paint. Hooray! I do, actually. I have quite a few more to paint. But they're going to be more interesting characters because I've got like my odd boys to paint. So I've got like my pain boy, my mech boy, my runt herd. I've got a couple of more knobs to paint, and then I've got some vehicles. I've got a couple of heavy weapon orcs to paint. So let's get make sure that gets red first before it. Bloop, bloop, bloop. So good times. But I'm happy to sort of be putting the bulk of the army, essentially what we call breaking the back of the army, in my rear view mirror. That red back here. And don't worry if you get red on his clothing, because you have to go fix that too. Jeez. He looks like a little devil with his that ridiculous helmet. Like, look at the crest on it. What's up with that? Oh, orcs. You never cease to make me go, oh. And here we go, Harvey Keitork. The Harvey Keitel of orcs. Yeah, I really do love these old space orcs. They're probably some of my favorite Rogue Trader models, to be honest. Eldar would be up there. Like those first generation Jess Goodwin Aspect Warriors. Which ones would be my favorite? Well, the original Striking Scorpions were amazing. All of them were. All those original Aspect Warriors are great. But I would say that in terms of a whole, the Space Orc range for Rogue Trader would have to be the best. The best. Just the best. And it's nice now that here I am, 30 years later, able to realize the ambition that I had all those years ago to build and paint a Space Orc army. Just gonna clean some of that off and just add a bit more of the rust red here to help that out, because that transition is a little odd. But that'll look fine once it's dry. Beauty! There you go, Harvey Keitork. Next. Oh, Orc with the heavy bolter. That's a cool heavy bolter, eh? You know what's really cool? The twin-linked heavy bolter that the Komasar is carrying is basically the same gun. Isn't that cool? What? Twin-linked. Whatever. Twin-linked back in second edition is like kind of like twin-link is today. It's double the shots. That was something they changed for third edition. In the third edition of the game, they changed twin-linked to reroll misses. And it was that way all the way through until 7th edition. Because essentially 3rd edition was with us for a really long time, considering what it gave us in terms of 40k. We got 3rd edition, 4th edition, which was like 3rd edition with a few little tweaks here and there. Like, I can't remember all the actual changes between those editions, because like, I remember 6th edition was pretty drastic. 6th edition was almost a hard reset in some ways. They added that whole like target priority thing where you had to shoot at the closest, and you had to remove casualties from the front of the unit first, so all of a sudden it became really critical what models you put where. I didn't play much 6th edition. I played very little 6th edition, very little 7th edition. when 8th edition came out, I played one game fairly early on with my Eldar against a guy, Mike, and just to see how the game worked. And I didn't really care for it because I was using the Eldar list from the Index, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and all my old Eldar-y tricky tricks didn't really work anymore. And I kind of went, oh, it's like a whole new game I got to relearn. Okay, well, I can probably think of something better to do with my time right now. And I think I did. I didn't play that. What did I play? Bolt action? Well, I played a lot of bolt action then. Played some Necromunda. But yeah. So this shoulder pad looks like it needs to be washed. What's going on there? I don't know. 5th edition was indeed the best edition. For Fantasy Battle, yes. You could even say maybe 5th edition was the best edition of 40k, at least in that cycle of the 3rd edition Legacy. I would say 5th was probably the best one. At least in terms of the game I like to play and the army I like to play. So I built a Red Corsair army for 5th edition back in 2009, 2010. I gotta get it. I gotta get those models out and do a little photo session with them, because they are some of. It's one of my favorite armies, and it's also a very complete army in terms of what in it is done, and there wasn't really much left unfinished in that army. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just putting some wash on here because I realized I don't think that shoulder got washed. So we'll see how that goes. That wash was a little bit dry. It had been sitting on my wet palette for a while, so we'll see how that sets. I have the same problem here. Hail Huron, yeah, man, Huron Blackheart. That model that came out was kind of what cinched me doing Red Corsairs, because I really like that Huron Blackheart mini, the new one, the current one, and his little Hamadra and stuff. And I always like the idea of the Red Corsairs going back to 2nd edition, when they were in the back of the Chaos Codex in 2nd edition, and they were all like blue, but they had like their symbols were X'd out with big red X's, and it talked. And Huron was in there as a special character, and it talked about. And it was just, I like the idea of them being more recent renegades, and so that whole Red Corsair thing really appealed to me. And then when the 5th edition Chaos Codex came out, and it turned out to be a really good addition for the game, although I would say that the 3.5 Chaos Codex is the one that everyone talks about as being the best for that edition, because that was the one that had like all the crazy things you could do. You had all the Legion rules. That was a fantastic codex. But I like the 5th edition codex because it was focused in a lot of ways. It was more geared towards building like renegade lists than building like a Chaos Legion from the era of the Heresy, right? It was more about like building renegade Marines, and they gave Space Marines. NASA Joe, you have 3,000 points of Astral Claws. You should talk to Tyler because he's got a bunch of Astral Claws too. You guys are weirdos for making Astral Claw armies, just so you know. Why would you make an Astral Claw army when you can make a Red Corsair army? Huh? Weirdos. Oh, yours are all Primaris Astral Claws? Oh, well, that's just heresy. I mean, that's a guy I know who has a Primaris Luna Wolves army, and that's totally heresy, right? But you know what? It's your hobby. Who's gonna say that it's wrong, right? Who's gonna say that you shouldn't be painting models the way you want to paint them because some guy who wrote the lore said that this is the way it is, right? And you say, well, that may be the way it is as you see it, but that's not the way I see it. And then you have an excuse to paint Primaris Astral Claws. Yeah. So, that's cool. But anyway, so my Red Corsair army, I'll get it out and I'll do some photographs of it because I actually won Best Army at a big tournament here. Actually, a very, very, very good tournament, Astronomicon, which is a narrative tournament. It's one of the few 40K tournaments I used to enjoy attending, because it was narrative based and because every table was essentially a different scenario, and it didn't have a lot of those trappings of like a competitive 40K army. Look at that. Look at how silly that helmet is. God. So yeah, I like my red Corsairs. I like my red Corsairs. I like red because red is best. And they were actually fairly instrumental in developing what I would say is like my modern painting style, like my contemporary painting style. Very much evolved doing those because they were painted very differently than anything else I had done. I did a lot of stippling, a lot of like wacky conversions. They were all, it was a bits box army. Originally the army started off was that I had 2 units of Tiger Claws in the army. That's cool. I had a bunch of bits, like a bunch of like 40K Chaos bits and a bunch of 40K regular Space Marine bits in a bits box. And I said, you know what, I bet I could build a unit out of just stuff I pull out of this bits box. And so I converted up a unit of Chaos Marines, and then I did another unit because I had that many more bits, and then I had to buy a couple models, and I was able to convert and make even more. And at the end of the day, I ended up with 2 squads of 10, a bunch of not Devastators, Havocs, and but they're all like, and a lot of them, I had like shoulder pads from. Like one guy, I remember he has a White Scar shoulder pad, but I chopped it all up. Like I went at them all with like knives. You'll see him. You know what? I'm gonna do that this weekend. I think on Saturday. I was saying in my Discord, some friends that I want to photograph my Eldar and I want to photograph my Red Corsairs. So, but that I need these lights that I use here, so I can't dismantle all this because it's a pain in the ass to set it back up. But I can do it over the weekend. So maybe what I'll do is Saturdays after I do the art show, and I don't know what I'm going to do for the art show this Saturday. I have no ideas. But after that, I'll dismantle it, and unless it's nice outside. If it's nice outside, then I'm just going out. But if it's kind of crappy outside, which the weather's starting to sort of turn that direction now, that we are into deepest, darkest ORKTOBER. But yeah, I do want to get that stuff photographed. And I may even have to do some touch-ups on some of the Red Corsair stuff, because that stuff's been sitting, even the Eldar, you know, it's been sitting in battle foam for a while. So it should be okay, but you never know. There's probably a lot of models that have some battle damage to them that I may have just overlooked at the time because they were being used to play games with. But my Eldar army is the modern version of an army that was started back in 2nd edition. It was technically started back in Rogue Trader because I had Eldar previous to that, but they weren't Ulthway. They were painted purple. They were okay, and they didn't. I don't really think I had a name for the craft world at the time. It was just kind of like Purple Guardians, and then an excuse to paint Aspect Warriors and stuff. So that was really my first Eldar army, and that army got repainted and repurposed and became Ulthway, which was my 2nd edition mainstay army. Trying to think what else I painted in 2nd edition. I would have done a bunch of other randoms. Oh, my Black Legion. So my other 2nd edition army would have been my Black Legion, but that would have been later on, because that would have been Chaos Codex, and that would have been 94-ish. I'm going to call that good enough for Troop Jojo here. Look at this guy. Now that that's dry, we can throw some paint on his little knee pad here. The only red on this model is this little tiny knee pad, other than his eyes. There we go. And then let's see how this guy's shoulder did. Oh, that's fine. So Yeah, so that's my... So, and then in 3rd edition, I played Eldar again. Continued to work on my Black Legion, but then I sold my Black Legion army, which was a regret. And, you know, I think any army that I've sold or gotten rid of over the years, I regret, which is why I tend not to do it now, why I tend to hang on to things these days. But I sold that Black Legion army. I did photograph it before I sold it, so once I get those negatives scanned and digital versions of them, and I have access to a neg scanner, I just have to go and use it. It's down at a studio. I scan all of that stuff, get all those photos up onto the galleries on the eternalchronicles.ca, and then yeah. So, what's going on? Have you done Inquisiting Exterminatus on the art show? No. Should I do that? I think I had it out last week because I was looking at the 3rd edition orc art in it, to sort of like show like how that I was different than the previous, the Rogue Trader era art. So it was like the 2nd edition art, which was all like the Mark Gibbons, John Blanche stuff. The Rogue Trader era arc, which is all Paul Bonner, Adrian Smith, others, who I'm not naming them because I'm omitting them. I'm not naming them because I just don't remember, but others. But really, when you think about Here We Go era art, you think Paul Bonner and Adrian Smith. Those are the two that sort of strike me. And then in 3rd edition, that was when GW had a lot of studio artists, and they were so they're and the art, the style of how orcs were portrayed in the game changed drastically every edition. It's up until about 4th edition. That codex was actually pretty good. The 4th or the 5th edition, was 4th or 5th edition that Orks got that codex. I want to say it was they didn't have any new codex until 5th. Because that's just the way it was back then, guys. You didn't get a codex for your army every edition. Especially not if you were Orks, man. Same things with Orks and Goblins. They have no 5th edition book. Their 4th edition book lasted them through. And then they got a 6th edition book and a 7th edition book and an 8th edition book. But at one point, they just got them right the first time. There's nothing wrong with that 4th edition Orc Army book, Orc and Goblin Army book. What was wrong with the 3rd edition Orc and Goblin Army book was that they basically, they ostensibly dropped the idea of clans. Even though they released all that Armageddon stuff, and that was all Goths, and, you know, like the clans still existed in our souls, in our hearts. The clan still existed. There weren't any real rules for building a clan army, the way that the Orc army worked. And then later on with 4th edition, they really sort of, I don't think they didn't really bring back the clans until 8th edition, when they essentially made it like one of the they made it like that's the choices that you make based on like choosing a Space Marine chapter. You choose a clan, right? And that gives you more or less access to more or less things, right? Imagine not playing Cult of Speed. Well, there's a reason why I play in a lot of red on my orcs. That's because they just go faster. It's true, man. That's why I love to paint red on orcs. Also because red and green look fantastic together. And if you do it wrong, they look like Christmas trees. So you have to be careful what kind of red and green you do. Because it's easy for red and green to go from looking really cool to looking very festive. So I could break out Inquis Exterminatus. We could talk about some 40k art. Actually, you know what I kind of want to break out are my Brian Froud books. You know who Brian Froud is. You know he has a lot to say about goblins. So that may be something to look at this Saturday. Or maybe I don't do an art show this Saturday. Or I do something else. I do a literature show. It's the very distinguished gentleman gamer wishes to discuss literature. Because on yesterday's stream, I got talking about pulp novels there for a bit. Like 1950s, 60s pulp sci-fi stuff for a bit, and I realized I have a lot to say on the subject. I have a lot to say on most subjects. It's... Bennett. Bananas. I said this orc is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A. Yes, this orc is bananas. And no, I'm not saying anything. Because I'm just painting red. I just want to get this red done. There we go. How about you, buddy? Oh, look at you. You got all kinds of... I love these little reminders that Kev Adams puts onto his models to remind you, hey, just remember who sculpted this. Little smiley face belt buckle that this guy's got. And when I get into the 1.5 orc stuff, because this is all really old orc stuff, right? Like there's old orc stuff and then there's really old orc stuff. This is the really old orc stuff. The old orc stuff, which is what I'll be doing after this, and by that I mean sometime in 2021, when I do my freebooters. Freebooters. Space Orc Pirates. Good times. The best of times. And really, it's a shame that the Space Orc Raiders Pirate Clan theme was kind of abandoned in 3rd edition in favor of making the game more serious. 3rd edition Warhammer 40k is a very serious game. It's the beginning of the rise of High Grimdark, right? It's less satirical and less tongue-in-cheek, and it takes itself a little bit more seriously. So, you know. There we go. Look at that guy's little elbow pad. Oh, I'm gonna do you for last. I need some more paint here though. Oh. Where are we at? Oh, 1:38. Well, I'm gonna do this till 2. I gotta go pick up my kid after school today, so I'll be cutting the stream at 2 o'clock, which is in 20 minutes. But I will keep painting until then. Are you gonna put your Logan's World scenarios to paper? Yes and no. With Logan's World, it's less about scenarios and more about a script. Because the way I want to do Logan's World is I want to do it very narrative. With a game master, who would be me. Because that's sort of the old Rogue Trader way, right? Where you that's something that should probably be discussed as well. We can discuss that, is when Rogue Trader moved from a game played by 3 people, or 2 people, with one being a game master and the other person being a player, or 2 players and a game master running them through a scenario, and became basically a 2-player game where it was you and your opponent playing off against each other. Because, yeah, this guy's got no red on him at all. What the hell, man? Show your clan loyalty, buddy. Same with this guy. He's got no red on him either. Psh. All right, how about you? Oh, man. All right. Well, this is getting easier. We're getting down to it, and you have already done. And you've got some weird knee pad thing that I painted red for some reason. I don't know why, but we'll just go with it. Just go with it, man. It's the worst that can happen. So the Logan's World stuff, I will be putting the scenarios to paper. They're going to be but it's all going to be very heavily narrative-driven content. So as opposed to like build an army list and play a game, or build, it's going to be like, well, you have these guys, and this is what your guys are trying to do. Here's your story, and your opponent has these other guys, and here's their story and what they're trying to achieve in the game. And to borrow the phrase from the Warhammer 8th edition marketing, forge the narrative, right? So you're building your narrative based on what happens with you and your opponent. When I said I'm leaving this guy for last, is the reason why I'm leaving this guy for last. He's got so much red on him. So that's sort of what I do. So there will be scenarios, definitely. But more it's the overlying narrative of what's going on Logan's World and what I kind of want to portray. Because it's not going to be like a Necromunda campaign where you have a setting and then people sort of play games within that setting, and there's in-between game sort of resolution. All that's going to be handled more like what I did with Ash with our Inquisitor Belladonna versus Inquisitor Hand stuff, which is you build the narrative within the game itself and then sort of see where that leads you, and then nothing has to be formalized. Nothing there. I don't need a campaign system. I don't need get this advance. It's a simple sort of like, well, what's the result of the game? Okay, so now what does that mean that the next chapter of the story has to be, right? And that's sort of what I would rather do, and it's more just an excuse for me to paint these really nice old models, which I love painting old miniatures now. Something that I discovered late last year was just how much I miss painting old metal models compared to all the new, what I call fantastic plastic that Games Workshop puts out. And don't get me wrong, man. Those fantastic plastic, they're fantastic. Like it's not a mocking name to say that they're fantastic. Some of the stuff that they're doing with plastic kits is unbelievable. Just look at the new giant. What is he called? Mega Gargant, whatever. But I mean, I fell in love with those Iron Jaws. I fell in love with the new Gloomspite Gits, because they were basically just carrying on the legacy of the old 7th edition Night Goblin models that had been established at that time. And then but the newer versions of them, like the new version of those Squig Hoppers, those models are amazing. And they were so much fun to paint. The new versions of there's things like the Gobblepalooza, which I haven't even painted my Gobblepalooza. I bought it, and they didn't really fit in with the list I was doing at the time, which was Squigs and Trolls. Squigs and Trogs. Because who doesn't want to have an army that is mostly Squigs and Trogs? And the answer is, I want to have that kind of army. I really like the new Khorne stuff. I like how they basically dialed up Khorne to like its most corniest. And if you know the new Khorne models, you kind of might get what I'm saying. The new Air Dwarves, the Caradrons, those are really cool. And I keep waiting for them to do Goblin Sky Pirates. Come on, Age of Sigmar. You want to get me back? You want to get me back buying Age of Sigmar models? Give me some Goblin Sky Pirates to fight. Because they talk about them in the lore, in the Caradron Overlord's book. They talk about like some airborne Wa thing that the Caradrons have to fight. And that's what I want. Give me an airborne... Give me like goblins with Squig blimps. Is it that hard to do? How many sculptors you got working over there at Games Workshop? Sculpt me up some Squig blimps. I'd love it. And then let me play games that take place entirely in the sky against whatever else you build in the sky. Go build some other sky pirates. Bring back the those ridiculous high elf swift hawk. What are they called? Those ridiculous sky sleds that the high elves had in 8th edition that existed in Age of Sigmar. I don't think they exist in Age of Sigmar anymore. I don't think they're in the Cities of Sigmar list. I think the only thing that you get from those Swift Hawk agents or those whatever are the revised Plastic Shadow Warriors. And that's the thing about Age of Sigmar. And I think Alex made the point best, was that it feels like half the game is like wallowing in... Maybe it wasn't Alex, it was someone else. Half the game is like wallowing in the fact that it's you're stuck with these older legacy models left over from Warhammer, and then the other stuff is new stuff that either hits or misses, right? Like it looks like the new elves, the light elves, the Lumineth Realm Lords are missed. From what I understand, the sales of them were not great. A lot of stores are still sitting on those collector's edition boxes. I know some stores even broke open those boxes and sold off all the stuff separately because the boxes themselves weren't moving off the shelves. So, and that may be just because of the time of year that they were released, because of the year that they were released being 2020 and all bets being off in 2020. You know, because they were delayed. They were supposed to come out much earlier in the year, and they delayed them because of COVID. And that may have hurt the release for them in the long term. I don't know. People I don't think really liked them. I like some of it. I'm not sure what I think of the mountain goats. Yeah, I don't know. They're okay. Look at this guy. Oh, he's badass. This guy is going to be a knob leading one of my house units, because he's cool enough that he needs to be leading. He needs to have a squad of boys to boss around, clearly. So what's going on in the chat? Have you done it? Sculpt to speed. Are you going to put your Logan's World scenarios? If a knife can sculpt it, a brush can paint it. Yes, I've heard you say that before, Alex, and that is absolutely true. That's why I think I'm more relaxed and just enjoy it more. Just painting these old models, they're not as pretentious. They don't assume as much, if that makes any sense. Like some of the newer plastics, you know, you put them together and you go, okay, now I got to paint it, and it really takes a lot out of you to paint it because there's so much on the model. There's so much going on. There's so many little details and stuff. An old metal model like this, you know, like there's something about the simplicity of it that makes it easier to paint, definitely. But like you said, like if a knife can sculpt it, a brush can paint it. And that's the thing, is that these were all sculpted by hand. The original version of this was this size, and Kev Adams, and you can see, you know, like where they've gone in and sculpted, and Kev Adams is notorious for actually leaving little secrets on his models. I have, I don't know which, I have to find the model, but if you flip the model over, underneath here, he's like sculpted a little mess. It's like a little message that he's written in. I'll have to see if I can find the model that it's on. It's one of the fantasy orcs, I believe, that I own. And it's just like little things like that, where it was made by a person's hand. It wasn't assembled from assets on a hard drive. And I'm not saying that, you know, sculpting things on computers is somehow cheating or somehow easy. It's different. I think it is easier. Overall, I think it's faster because, again, you can pull assets apart, you can repose things. So, like sculpting Howling Banshees, let's say, take an example. There's an X-Arc, then there are 3 or 4 different variant models, I think. So, and then there may be 2 variants based off those different dollies, right? So those all had to be cast, and then you had to basically or sculpted. Then you had to cast the dollies or the to then convert and recast so that you could make the variant, so that you would end up with like 4 different models, right? And then people like me would get them and bend them and like change the way that their arm are so that they all look unique. So you didn't have like clones or whatever. But now, you know, on a sprue, plastic sprue, you can put 5 to 10 different models, all completely different. You know, it may be the same basic digital maquette, but the way that you've posed it and the way that you've done it, you've changed it. So like the new plastic howling banshees, right? They're all I think there's a single sprue, so you basically get 5 bodies and then heads and arms, and the variants in the heads and the arms allow you basically like a huge amount of options, right? Even among something as strict as like an aspect warrior, right, where all their gear is going to be identical, all their war gear, their helms are all going to be the same. There's not going to be really a lot of difference in those models because it's part of the fact that they're an aspect warrior, that they're not different, right? So, all right. Well, where are we at? Let's take a look. These orcs are basically... I mean, I'm prepared to say that they're done. There's a few little things on them here and there that aren't. So I'll take care of that. I'll probably take care of that off stream at some point. I got to go back over the guns with some metal. This guy's pants need to be finished, so that gold needs to be done up. But that's pretty simple stuff. Some of them, like this guy, the butt of his gun needs to be painted, needs to be finished. Again, he's got some gold over here that needs some work. This knife needs some work to make it look more like a blade as opposed to just sort of a big dirty piece of metal, which is actually probably better for it. But I want to get on to some other stuff, so what I'll end up doing is finishing most of these guys off stream. The last little bits, like this guy, I would just say whatever, his goggles got to be done. This guy's helmet needs to be done. Yeah. So, and there's a few other like this guy who I decided. Someone mentioned that I do like a scrimshaw. I think it said Wraithbone scrimshaw. So I'm gonna do that with the butt on this. So I'm gonna paint it up like it's ivory, like it's been carved, and then his goggles need to be done. But other than that, like little things, it's all done. It's all, you don't have to worry about, and especially on models of this size and with this, the way that the detail is on them. Yeah. So let's just finish reading up the chat here real quick, and then I'm going to shut things down for the day. This is coffee I brewed at 7:30 this morning that I'm still drinking out of my hydro flask there. So let's see. The goblins took over a port city. So there you go. So that's what they need. Isn't that what Owen converted was a goblin overlords? I'm not sure. Because they're expensive. $105 dues for 5 cav. Yeah, I guess that would be a lot, wouldn't it? The new armies feel incomplete and the old 8th edition Warhammer armies feel out of place. They need to stop supporting old armies ASAP. Well, what are the old armies now? Because basically you have Cities of Sigmar, which is like where they've taken all the old elves and humans that aren't Stormcast and whatever other funky elves, and jammed them into Cities of Sigmar, which was sort of a place where they could put those legacy models. If you look at what they do to the Gloomspite Gits, that's a complete army. Like, there's nothing from there that's missing, really, right? Whereas with the Cities of Sigmar stuff, they all had holes, so they take them all together, and you take all the humans and the dwarfs and the elves, and you put them into 6 different cities with different, sort of special rules and makeups and stuff. Then they fill each other's holes, right? But they do, like, the elves don't have any, like, line troops, right? So you get the humans and the dwarves for that. The You know, you don't have any big stuff, so I don't know. But okay, so I totally understand what you're saying, Alex, and yeah, I agree. But if you look at like Gloomspite Gits, it was done right. If you look at well, they didn't really release battle tomes for what else? Oh, okay, so Gloomspite Gits they did right. Bone crunchers, bone chewers. What are the savage orcs? The bone breakers, whatever. The savage orcs. When they released those guys as their own battle tome, that felt incomplete because you basically had 2 plastic kits, a couple of fine cast characters, and 1 plastic character, and that's it, right? So that was done wrong, and they corrected that when they combined it with the Iron Jaws, which I hate. I hate the idea of that. I like my Iron Jaws just being pure Iron Jaws, so I just continue to play them as Iron Jaws. I'm not going to play them as... I'm not going to add any Savage Orcs into my Iron Jaws. Bone Splitters, because they split the bones to get the marrow, because that gives them the Gorky Morky power or whatever. But then that never should have been split out. Why was there no, like, basic Orc and Goblin equivalent army in Age of Sigmar that they could have done? Because they had enough plastic kits to do it. By far. The new plastic boar boys that came out with 8th edition, which are fantastic kits, are gone. And those are fairly new kits. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're fairly new kits. And they're great, they're amazing kits, but they don't exist anymore. Why not? Why were those not added? You could have added those to the Iron Jaws as like a scouting... the Iron Jaws Outriders, right? Because you have your like big gore gruntas, but then those little boar boy guys would be great. Why are they not part of the Iron Jaws army? They fit in aesthetically, absolutely. And they got rid of basic orc boys, and they got rid of like basic goblins. They kept the night goblins and made them Gloomspite Gits. I think they called them something else for the Moon Clan. Yeah, they're called Moon Clan for a while, and then they're Gloomspite Gits, which is a much better name. They're night goblins. But that was done right. Iron Jaws, you didn't need a huge amount of variance. Iron Jaws, you still got 4 characters. You got the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher, the Rhythm Stick guy, the War Chanter, and the weird knob, the Shaman. And am I missing one? No, and then you've got your 3 units, who are your Brutes, who are like your core guys, and then you've got your Cavalry in the big Gorgruntas, and then you've got your legacy models, which are the old plastic black orcs, which from what I understand is the first kit that Games Workshop designed completely on computers. There was no hand sculpting in any of that, and it shows in the models for sure. So yeah, I don't know why they didn't. And there he is, the big red machine, the Humongous, and my little chariot there. So I don't know why they didn't bother with that. They could have. They for sure could have. So let's see. I'm just going to finish up in the chat here. It feels like the new armies feel like proper scale and have dynamic minis designed for OAS. Gloomspite look good, except for the old basic troops look out of place. I don't think they do because, again, you said it right there. They're your basic troops. They're your basic core guys. It should not take a long time to paint a single Night Goblin because you have to paint so many of them. The most reason that I never finished a Night Goblin unit was there was just so many Night Goblins to paint. And the ones that I had were the plastic Brian Nelson ones that came out at the end of 4th, beginning of 5th. Right around the time that this guy came out. This guy right here. Right around the time that stuff came out. Idol of Gork era, when they released all that stuff. Same with like Clan Rats and Plague Monks. The move forward towards more elite armies in the all made for AOS range is better. Yeah, they've really fucked up the Skaven. I think that not necessarily with the Clan Rats, but with the Plague Monks, they probably should have done new kits. I don't know. Apparently, Skaven are the best army in the game right now in Age of Sigmar, from what I understand, is the basic Skaven army. Don't get me wrong. I prefer Warhammer Fantasy Battle to AOS. I just think that they should have changed the scale a little bit more. Iron Jaws I found perfect. Personally, I think blobs of orcs would have just muddled the focus. Well, the largest unit of orcs I have in my Iron Jaws army is I have 20 Ardboys. And I can't even field 20 Ardboys in my 2,000 point list. I have to cut it down to like 10 Ardboys to get it to fit in. But I think there's a special ability I can take that allows me to like summon more Ardboys. So whatever. But yeah, it just there's things about AOS that I really like, and there's things about AOS that I don't like, and I could do an entire show on that. I could sit here and talk for hours on that, so we won't get into that right now. But rest assured, I will never stop playing Orcs and Goblins in whatever game comes along. As long as they're a playable race in that game, chances are that's what I'll end up playing. So on that note, it is 2 p.m., so I'm going to sign off. I hope you enjoyed today's stream. If you did, like and subscribe down in the whatever. You're supposed to say that, right? That's like proper YouTube etiquette. Make sure to like and subscribe and click the bell notice so you get notified when I post new videos. Yeah, all that and a bag of pips. So let's say it. My outro, right? I'll see you guys here tomorrow. Same work time, same work channel. Until then, I'll see you on the flippity flop. And yeah, peace out to all the folks out in